Thank you for joining us today for the technical demo series on Microsoft Surround, IPAM QuickStart for visibility, automation, and control. My name is Bob Rose. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for DDI Value-Added Services. And joining me today is Bob Cloak, our Principal Systems Engineer. Welcome, Bob.
Good day, everyone. Thank you.
So as we get started, today we're going to show you the Infoblox entry IPAM solution, IPAM QuickStart. And so let's move right on to today's agenda. We'll be covering the key networking priorities and challenges. We'll be giving you an overview and a solution and a view to the user experience, and then we'll be jumping into some case studies, and then we'll do our wrap up. So fairly simple, straightforward agenda. And let's get started. A lot of companies, Bob, you know, as we talk to different ones, not only across the U.S. but also abroad, have a number of key priorities, and one is visibility. What exactly are you seeing out there for visibility?
Sure. Well, a lot of companies that I work with and I go into, large enterprises and small ones, is they need visibility. Like if you can't see what you can, that you have, your IPv4, your IPv6, your cloud, et cetera, then you can't control it. So visibility is really the main issue to start that people are complaining about and looking for help.
Yeah, and then another one that's a key priority is also around efficiency.
Right. They need a tool or environment that's always on, that can connect to different Active Directory sites and services, to look at the users, and to scale across, you know, wide networks and zones. And they have that available at their fingertips. So that efficiency is important now for companies that need to respond and be reactive and competitive very quickly.
Well, and that kind of leads into manageability as well.
Right. So once you have these steps, these platforms that can work together, then you have to look at automation, because each of them have their own silos, their own tools, and we need to start joining together and automating them so that they work together. And certainly, you know, with the deployment of now cloud environments, seeing what's on in the cloud, how to provision very quickly in the cloud, becomes part of that is a key priority.
Yeah, and anyone that's been watching the news lately is certainly concerned about security. We've heard about the Quora breach. We've heard about the Marriott breach of 500 million. And so this seems to just continue to resonate.
Yeah, DNS, you know, DNS security is not going to go away. Initially, it was a friendly protocol that connected everything together. It was the operator of the internet, but it's now under attack, the #1 attack point. So it needs to be protected, especially in an enterprise where people can hack it and redirect it. So it's definitely a key priority for protection.
But even though we have those key things, you know, there are these challenges. We have limited visibility, inefficient processes. A lot of companies still run on different siloed platforms. And then, of course, we just mentioned security compliance. We did actually some research. Infoblox commissioned some research, and of the respondents that participated, 81% indicated that they wanted discovery, especially around newly spun up assets, and that was really a key issue. Another one showed that 8 out of 10, and I don't know, Bob, if you you know, align with this, but many folks are out there running DNS manually or with a custom script, and 8 out of 10 seems pretty high to me, but at the same time, that seems you know, the results that the research gave us.
Unfortunately, it's still the case. The concept of automating DNS is pretty new. It really came about with the cloud environments where they have to rapidly deploy IPs and DNS names. So it's really pushed the ball forward. But yeah, it's still a process that people have to learn about and overcome the inefficiencies they have.
Yeah, and according to the research, about 80% used three or more platforms, which I think is more reasonable, I think, to, based on what folks have to deploy at different budget cycles and so on. You can kind of see how that might happen.
Right. Well, silos, and I keep talking, going to people and agencies, companies, and they keep telling me about silos, how they're stuck into different silos, and the fact that these platforms that they have are great for what they've done, best of breed solutions, but they only see what they can see, and they don't look at the entire big picture now. So the breaking down these silos is really the key challenge, and how to help people do that.
And then, security and compliance is also key too. We just mentioned that. So what are some of the things that you're hearing, though, just in terms of visibility?
Well, again, a lot of places seem to think that what they see is what they know, and there's a lot of blind spots that they can't see. And if sometimes if you can't see it, you don't think it exists, but those blind spots exist. So, getting that visibility and overcoming those blind spots from end to end, from layer 2 up to layer 7 of the network stack is a real challenge. And how do you bring that together?
And then, of course, lots of folks are still using spreadsheets, right?
Everywhere I go, spreadsheets are still the number one tool that people have developed into their own teams and silos. And then there's a lot of data in those spreadsheets that now can be put into a centralized environment so that everybody can share that. But sharing that data and getting them out of those old processes is a challenge.
And then, of course, having access to near real-time data, I think, when you have multiple platforms, that can really be a problem.
Right. And when you start collapsing that down and removing some of those silos, or have the silos start communicating with each other, that's where operational efficiencies really starts to accelerate.
Yeah, and then of course, we mentioned the Quora and the Marriott attacks, but there's so many attacks that every company has to face on a daily basis. It just seems to be overwhelming at times.
Right, and most companies, they're not telling you how they're being attacked, but that's something that they don't really want to share. But the fact is that DNS is one of the primary attack points. And we know that today, and you have to look seriously at protecting that and securing that both internally and externally in your environment.
So not only is visibility and inefficiencies and silos and security issues in play, a lot of folks, still use Microsoft management today. And so let's talk about that. There are some deficiencies, right? Like one is around the challenge of architecting, deploying, and maintaining a Microsoft IPAM environment.
Right. Microsoft tried to address this in their 2016 environment, where they put together a solution of multiple silos, and I keep hitting on that point of silos. But even on the same domain controller, you have DNS and DHCP. Those are two different silos on the same system, and they're not correlating or sharing data. So what they've done is they come together and they put together a cluster and a database, and they try to patch it it's but it's still it's 5 servers or 5 systems that need reboots and upgrades and patches, and it hasn't become a single easy to use platform.
So in another area is discovery, right? I mean, that can really be a challenge if you can't see everything, as you pointed out earlier.
Well, right. Microsoft as a company is primarily focused on looking at the Windows servers and clients and services and Active Directory. And I think they know and understand that there's a bigger heterogeneous world out there, but their tools that they provided don't address that. So it's great if you're inside a pure Microsoft environment, but that's not what most places have today. So it's a challenge.
Well, and then replication, especially for IPAM, has its issues as well, right?
Right, they're a multi-master environment. By default, it can take 15 minutes to have an update that, and it's certainly in a large enterprise that spans, east, west coast, or around the globe. Those updates don't get visible for some time. So then becomes the challenges of seeing that data. So it's not a very effective solution if you have all these time delays built in.
And then, of course, Next IP, right, has some boundary challenges.
Right, and the next available IP, again, is only really looking at the Microsoft environment. They have to look heterogeneous to the layer 2, layer 3 devices, and they're not able to do that. So they're if they stay in their own box, then they can step on other IPs and have conflicts and issues.
So what we want to do now is just get into quickly what is IPAM QuickStart. Bob, can you walk us through that?
Yes. Infoblox has put together a suite of solutions here, Authoritative IPAM, which is the central master, and then has a connector to Microsoft to pull in the DNS and DHCP data from Microsoft protocol services and Active Directory. So that's the start. Also, discovery with network insight for SNMP-based discovery and syncing in and provisioning. Looking into the clouds, whether they're private or public clouds, so have some network automation into those clouds. Again, another blind spot that has to be overcome because these cloud teams are deploying without, working in their own environment separate than the enterprise. There's an ecosystem component that allows us to now break down these silos. So whatever platform security and network platforms that you have with their own databases of IPs and subnets, to start sharing those. And that's what we call an ecosystem. And then wrapping it all up with a reporting and analytics, a Splunk-based engine that we have that works with these pre-built reports that populates all this data that we're collecting.
So then, we have Authoritative IPAM, we have the discovery component, we have the ecosystem, we have reporting. How does that all come together? I mean, how does it work?
Right. Well, the Infoblox is a DDI solution. So DDI stands for DNS, DHCP, and IPAM. And what it really means is a term that collapses those protocols which have their own databases into a single database structure. And that single database really becomes the control point of how this works, because now you have this central database. We're not managing IPs and names anymore. We're managing objects, and those objects happen to have a 4 address, a 6 address, a MAC address, a lease time, a location, device type owner. So all of that data that's coming in from these different silos can be populated into this authoritative IPAM. And then once we have that foundation, you have components to do automated discovery, other tools that we can sync in their IPAM, whether it's spreadsheets or other platforms. We can sync in their IPAM from discovery, look at their switches and ports and tell what's online and off, and then on-premise, we can do this on-premise and in the cloud. So it interplays into a solution that gives you a near real-time view of what's going on from the smallest environment up to a global environment.
Well, so that's a great summary. So for those folks that are on the call today, what's in it for them?
Well, it definitely increased value and investment in your infrastructure. Certainly, the Microsoft management component that we have gives you a IPAM environment for Microsoft itself, especially if you're using multiple forests and domains. We can pull it into a central view, and for the first time, you're going to get a true IPAM, authoritative IPAM for the Microsoft environment. And then also everything else that's on the network, all your layer 2, layer 3 infrastructure, that gets pulled in, associated to the same IPs and subnets, and starts populating those into attribute fields, so that when you log in, you have a single pane of glass to to view all this, and it's not something that you have to swivel chair from one platform to the other platform, or find the right person to log in and to find the data and then piece it together yourself. So that's near real-time updates, and it has both historical data. So if you started today, 2 years from now, you can look back and see the status and what was on your network. And then it has predictive analysis of what's going on in the future and what percent growth you can see having by these different protocols.
All right, that's a very good overview. So what we'd like to share with you now is a roadmap, and really today's discussion is really going to focus really around everything in this box around authoritative IPAM. So perhaps you're on premises, perhaps you're in the hybrid cloud. So if we talk about IPAM QuickStart, it's going to focus on the Infoblox grid, network insight for discovery, our Microsoft management overlay, and reporting and analytics. But then perhaps you have a cloud initiative, and so we're going to give you some insights around our cloud network automation and the plugins that we have, as well as the ecosystem. So all of that really at a high level kind of shows where the focus is for the remainder of the presentation today, really on authoritative IPAM, because that's really where everything starts. After that, you can add on DHCP or DNS. Perhaps you might want to do load balancing or network configuration and change management. We have solutions for that. And then ultimately, you might be interested in security as well. And we have a number of security solutions as well that we can share, all again that have its focal starting point in IPAM. So, Bob, what other thoughts do you have? There's obviously some key benefits right around IPAM QuickStart that would be helpful for people to know about.
Right. So all of these areas that you're seeing, these 4 areas you're seeing here, you can start. You've already probably have started to working into them, whether you're a cloud team or you're a network team or a security team, in your own environment. But the key, everything starts with authoritative IPAM, and all of these tools that you're working with should and must correlate back to a central IPAM. So then when you do provision in the cloud, an IP and a DNS name, it goes back into a central IPAM automatically. Or you start deploying DNS and DHCP, whether it's on Microsoft or on another Infoblox platform or else, it populates back into this authoritative IPAM. And then, the multiple teams can use that, like the security team can then access that data independently of having to go to the networking team and asking them for this information. They can access it directly because their data is in that IPAM itself.
And the other thing maybe just to mention is that, we're not really taking a prescriptive approach here, right? Because your time, your priorities, your needs may be very different. And so you can really plug in anywhere along. This is not really a linear progression, right? This is what are your needs and what are your challenges that you're trying to solve. So again, today we're going to focus really on the green and orange columns, but we can help you, as your time, as your priorities, as your budget allow. So let's just touch base real quick, Bob. Again, you've mentioned authoritative IPAM, Microsoft management. We have network insight for our discovery on-prem and for conflict remediation and provisioning. We've talked just briefly around cloud network automation. We have lots of different plugins. We're going to show you a couple of those today, but for discovery again in the cloud. So network insight is for on-premises. Cloud network automation is really discovery and management control in the cloud. And then we have the security ecosystem integration, and we're going to show you some of that as well today. And then we tie it all together with reporting and analytics. So, Bob, what about this this image to the right? It's really kind of an overview of the architecture.
It is, but you see at the top of the box, there's what's called a grid master, and that's really the authoritative master database for the centralized IPAM. And then you see the red lines or the orange line going down to Microsoft, so it's synchronizing in in near real time the updates that Microsoft is handing out DNS and DHCP, but it's automatically populated in that master. And then the arrow up to the left, as cloud teams go out and start to deploy in public and private clouds, the master could see all that and pull the data in from those clouds into the central view. And so this master is really the key, but then you can join it to your on-prem environment for discovery and reporting, and then also into your cloud environments. And it's a high available disaster recover, fault tolerant environment. So you put this in and your data now is protected and then shared by multiple people, multiple teams.
All right. And hey, Bob, we had a quick question. So Michael asks again, does QuickStart fully support IPv6? Are there any unique challenges in that environment?
Totally, it's IPv6 totally supportive. The master here can handle both IPv4 and IPv6. What's interesting about this single silo master is that we're not managing IPv6 or IPv4 independently. We're serving those to the services independently, but as far as the data in the master, it's an object, and that object has attributes of 4 and 6 and leases and max and location. So that object is really what we're managing, and when that object is created with a 4 and a 6 address, we're tracking that as a one object or one unit, and then we see how that object is changed through the course of its life and by who and what, and send alerts if something is not right. So yes, it fully supports it, and then fully does a discovery of layer 2, layer 3 for IPv6. And then now some of the cloud environments also do IPv6. I know AWS didn't, but I think they're coming around to it. So the QuickStart also reaches into their environment for both 4 and 6 to manage that also.
Great question, Michael. Thanks so much. Hope that helps. What we're going to do now is these blue slides that you see will be really kind of the topic that we're going to share for the intro for each of the sections. So what we're going to talk about right now is authoritative IPAM and how we automate accuracy and reliability. So Bob, can you give us some insights on this?
Yeah, so you can see the picture on the left. It's kind of a mess, right? And this is what we're trying to grasp and get organized. And, you know, depending on all those devices there are probably different silos or individual hosts with their own IPs and MAC addresses. You know, where are they? Where do they appear? What subnets are they on? What VLAN? What devices are they connected to? What are their DNS records? Who are the users that logged in? Where have they been historically? And then, you know, what is their current status? So that's what's called the authoritative IPAM, getting all that data into the picture on the right, which is organized so that multiple teams and users can log in, see the data that they need or have been responsible for, and then take, you know, action on that. So certainly adding new networks and ranges, once that's done, it's visible to the people the whole team or specific people out of different regions and such. Adding DNS records and then syncing those in from existing environments. As you know, there's multiple DNSs and multiple DHCPs in these environments, and how do you pull that into one? Certainly, you know, Microsoft AD, DNS, and DHCP is everywhere that I go, and we see, so that helps them pull in that information. Or if your agency or company was to buy another company and to merge together, how do you merge those two environments together and to manage that going forward? And then, you know, the red area there, when these networks or ranges or IPs or DNS drop offline, how does it automatically clean up the IPAM for you so that you don't have stale data in there that people can look at or cause conflicts? And this then is brought down to the switch port and the host configuration. So now not only are we seeing the IP and a DNS name, it's 4 and it's 6, but what switch and which port it's connected to, what VLAN it's on, and then eliminating any conflicts when you have to provision next available IP that is already in use. And this brings us to the single source of truth. And this is really what the authoritative IPAM becomes. It becomes a single source of truth for an enterprise or an agency, that everyone is sharing the same data, and it's not a spreadsheet that's being passed around and out of sync and closed by multiple people. This single source of truth is available for individuals. It's available for protocol services. It's available for security, networking, cloud teams, all to share and not to step on each other's feet, for example.
Yeah, the single source of truth is really critical. And the key here really is that we have authoritative IPAM as a solution for virtually any platform, right, Bob?
Right. This is the architecture for any platform that you have to achieve to pull all the data. And if you're not pulling all these components at the bottom, then yes, this is what goes back to, we're talking about blind spots. You don't have a blind spot. You have a blind spot in your wireless environment, or you have a blind spot in your DHCP environment, or you have a blind spot in the cloud. So these are all the key components that have to be pulled in, and then pulled up to a secure DNS environment and network automation, and have a platform manage that under a single pane of glass. And again, it comes down to the single silo and managing these hosts as objects, not individuals, IPs and records and such.
Well, now we'd like to touch on network insights. So this is the on-premises discovery, sync, and control. And really, some of the key values here are around discovery and visibility, as you can see, IPAM sync that Bob just mentioned, and then of course switch port management. That's really important. And then being able to report out on all of that. So in terms of kind of feature benefits, Bob, what do you see that customers like best about this solution?
Well, this is really what makes your IPAM active. This network insight is a non-stop, 24/7 discovery. When you first turn it on, you put in a seed device or seed router. It probes that device. It learns everything about it, and then talks to its neighbors. And then it builds out your entire topology until it reaches the ends of your network. And then from that point, that's your baseline. And then from that point on, you see anything new that comes on the network, and you see everything that falls off the network, and keeping it synchronized and up to date. So this is really what makes the on-prem portion of your network very active and discovered.
Hey, Bob, we did have a question. So Monique asks, for those that have spreadsheets, is there a way to import that information into the web GUI for an easy migration?
Yes. There's certainly there's probably in CSV files. Those files, you just can reorder the columns into a format that the Infoblox grid master can receive. And then once you have that, just by moving a few columns around, you can import the whole spreadsheet into the centralized master, and the data gets associated to the IPs and the subnets that are laid out inside the master. So the data again comes in and then populates into that. And then, certainly it gives you the flexibility to export from the master some subnet with various columns of data that would go into a spreadsheet. You can edit that spreadsheet offline and then reback import. So it's the CSV import is very dynamic, where you can go in and out of the environment very easily, and it's available to do that.
So capping back with this network insight solution, of course, being able to identify, compromised assets is really important. But as you were pointing out just a few moments ago, there's so many different devices, so many different network ports, and being able to resolve those conflicts is a huge advantage. So what we're going to do now is just give you a little bit of an insight around the architecture and how this distributed discovery with IPAM integration and automation all kind of work together. Bob, can you walk us through this one?
Right. So this is a picture of the architecture. Again, the master there is in the top of the box, and the network insights is an appliance that you can start with just one, as long as your networks are all visible through routers and switches from that from that one network insight, and we can go out and probe it, like I said, and then discover it, and then learn neighbors of neighbors, and then pull that back in. If you have an environment where you have VRFs or isolated networks or different companies that are not joined together, you can put a network insight into there, and then pull the data back into what we call a consolidator. The consolidator collects the data from these disparate environments and then pulls it back into a central view. So certainly you can start with one if everything is routable and visible in your environment, or you could put in multiple into different environments and then pull the data back into the central master.
All right, that's really good. So again, this architecture, along with the discovery and the integration and the workflows, help you really to not only to discover, but to manage and to find those areas of conflict and to automate your processes to make it much cleaner, much easier to manage your server provisioning and really give you some time back. And that's really one of the key advantages with Network Insight. So there are some use cases, right, Bob, around network visibility. Maybe you can touch on just a couple.
Sure. So with network visibility, what's on the network? What resources are available? What's the inventory? What data is available? And so this Network Insights, because it's probing at a layer 2, layer 3 device level, it's able to see updates of who's coming on and off the network and tell you who, what, where, and when. So that's really the network visibility. And if you haven't had this before, this is really an eye-opener for a lot of people, because it gives them these views, this visibility for the first time in their environment.
So in other areas, and we touched on it earlier, but security and compliance. So certainly there's some great advantages with this as well.
Right. So what's on since we're talking to the routers and the switches and switch ports, we're actually pulling in what's actually out there on your network. And as those change out there, they're reflected back through Network Insight back into the authoritative IPAM. But the security piece of this is valuable, because now if you determine that a client has been compromised or has malware on it, and it's sending out spurious messages that need to be addressed, how do you pinpoint that client on your network? Well, Network Insight will show who the client is, what users logged in, and what switch port they're connected to. So it really helps with not only compliance to give reports to agencies for compliance, but also for security to react very quickly and possibly shut down that rogue device.
Well, and not only that, perhaps many on the call today are network ops, or perhaps they work on the DNS, DHCP teams. And with this, you have some new opportunities to ensure collaboration with your security teams as well, right? Because now you're able to provide them with some information that perhaps they may not be seeing. And so this is really a great point. And then operationally, another thing that's really helpful with Network Insight is just what you can gain from automating a lot of these processes, right, Bob?
Right, and this also tells you that we might see things on your network that you didn't know were there. You think that, people are plugging in rogue devices all the time, and then this gives you the visibility into that. So once that's there, the operational efficiencies are in place to now protect conflicts and rogue device from taking malicious activity on your network. So it's the whole picture of increases your operational efficiencies for people to look at the data very quickly and to react to it and address any issues that come up.
Well, let's turn our attention now to cloud network automation. And so in this case, there are a number of advantages. It's very similar to what's going on with Network Insight, except that in this context, it's in a multi-cloud discovery, sync, and control type of an environment. What are some of the features and benefits, just quickly, Bob?
So, as you familiar in agencies, companies today, the cloud teams are going out and signing up with Amazon, Azure. They're building their own private clouds, and they're disconnected from the main enterprise. And so, this cloud network automation allows for the visibility of the master, the authoritative IPAM, to reach into those clouds, do discovery, and provide provisioning for the cloud teams in those environments, and then pull it back to a single pane of glass for management and control. Again, giving you visibility from the enterprise level for the first time for whatever business unit chooses, whichever cloud they want to work with. We can now have visibility into that and manage that and control that.
So let's talk a little bit about the cloud solution itself and some of the key value that you get if you do an Infoblox cloud solution.
Right. So certainly you've automated DNS and DHCP or IP provisioning into the cloud. And there's also done through APIs so that those provisioning can be built into orchestrators that provision very quickly for these clouds. They will deploy 50 machines. They want to destroy 50 machines. They can very quickly deploy that. And we do this in a multi-cloud environment. So whether you're in a private cloud with VMware or OpenStack or Microsoft, or public clouds with Amazon, Azure, and now Google, we support too. We're able to work with whatever cloud environments that are happening in your agencies and companies, and then pull that back into a central authoritative IPAM, giving you the visibility of all your virtual machines and networks, and organizing them. And so again, making sure that everybody is staying in the same subnet structure and there's no conflicts and overlaps and things like that.
And related to this, Bernie asked the question, how do you identify who's logged in on a device?
Yes, so we have the ability to connect to Active Directory authentication logs and Exchange authentication logs. So when we see the user, and that can be synced up to the master, Infoblox master, and so that when we see a change in those logs, it sends along the username associated to the IP that they're logged into. And then that name gets associated in the authoritative IPAM to that IP address for the lease of that. And then when those authentication logs change, we will automatically update who's logged into that IP.
Can you imagine the time savings of that? It's really quite astounding. And just having that reliability as well. So let's mention now the multi-cloud architecture. You kind of touched on it just a moment ago. But what are some other key thoughts that you have, Bob, on the architecture of the solution?
Right. So, again, business units are out there and they're going and deploying. And they're choosing which cloud environments they want to deploy into, and then the network team is saying, okay, well, how do we see and how do we participate in and help and visualize them under our single enterprise management? And so with the master here, the gold crown appliance in the center, it can reach into these different public and private environments and then discover in there, provision, and pull back the IPs in use. And then as they get deployed and destroyed in these clouds, they automatically come back and update the central IPAM. And it has high availability, disaster recovery, a single pane of glass, and policies for provisioning these IPs and networks so that it stays under the enterprise or the company's namespace. That is what we're seeing in a few places where people start deploying in the cloud. They start using the same namespace as their on-premise company. Well, there's a conflict now of IPs, DNS names that they were provisioning in the cloud and what's on-prem. And this way, now with this, it keeps it synchronized under a single structure so that they can't go rogue and start deploying without control from the central enterprise.
All right, let's talk about the automation process, right, around cloud network automation, because there is a very big difference in terms of having to run a lot of these processes manually versus simply setting up an automated approach.
Well, this is a big one because this is really addresses, cost savings here. The old approach traditionally was that when you wanted to provision new services, new hosts, new servers, you had to go through and make these requests and then track the IP, and then somebody has to check an update, a database or a spreadsheet, and usually goes through a remedy system or a case system to follow the workflow, and it potentially can take up to 18 days. And I've seen this in real life, 2 weeks, 18 days it takes to do that. Now with the provisioning of the cloud environments and the automation and the security that's built in, cloud teams can now deploy 50 machines and request 50 IPs and 50 DNS names within minutes and have their application up and running. And then, an hour later say, hey, we don't need 25 of those machines, to destroy 25 of them and take them off out. Eliminating this whole traditional approach in multiple people and multiple steps and multiple days to deploying services and applications.
Well, and not only that, you mentioned, the labor use there. That enables your company actually to redeploy those resources in higher value tasks for the company. So this is one of the key advantages, is the cost savings and the improvement that you can get in redeploying your labor resources into better, more productive uses of their time. So thanks for sharing that. We are now going to jump into a quick overview of Microsoft management, and really this is a key advantage, especially for a lot of teams that still want to keep their Microsoft protocols. It really builds the value of your investment. So we have a deep DNS, DHCP integration with Microsoft. It gives you that central management capability. One of the key advantages is an agentless connection, so that you don't really have to have extra overhead or performance impacts on your protocols. And then of course there's the syncing of your DDI components and automating that. We have the integration with Active Directory sites and services. You can see which IP address is being used by which user in the identity mapping functionality. And of course we tie all this together with reporting and with resource planning. So again, Bob, what are your thoughts as far as the actual grid and the architecture?
Right, so this is a certified solution from Microsoft that we use standard protocols for our appliances to reach and talk to domain controller for DNS and DHCP through standard Microsoft protocols, which is RPZ, DCOM, protocols that Microsoft has made open. So it requires no agents to be put on these domain controllers. It doesn't even require them to even touch them in any way, except giving us an account to access through this WIM protocol interface to pull the data back into Infoblox. And that can be synchronized every couple of minutes. So in this picture here, you're showing kind of a larger environment where you have an east and a west, and you can have an appliance, Infoblox appliance, probe the boxes on the east, or the domain controllers on the east, separately than the ones on the west, thereby increasing the replication time, because it's immediately pulled back into Infoblox very quickly, and makes us more near real time with the updates of the data that people want to access.
So one of the key advantages that we have with the Microsoft integration is cross-team support, right, Bob?
I'd say that's the key benefit. I mean, first of all, it's giving you the visibility for the first time to have a IP address management for a Microsoft environment at different ports, different domains, pulling the data into the centralized IPAM environment. Now, instead of only the Microsoft team being able to access this data. Now it's available for the network team to see utilization. It's available for the cloud team to see. It's available for the security team to see. And depending on what access you give them, now they're able to use that information to work in their environments to be rapid and easy to deploy. So that's really the operational efficiencies of this, eliminating the silos that few people can access to now pulling it into a central manager, a central authoritative IPAM that everybody can access.
Yeah, that's really good. So there are a number of use cases, and I think I'll just touch on these quickly. So many of these will be familiar with you: core network DDI, key use case, managing your access control. We have role-based access control to servers and data. Also having the ability to manage server installation and doing configurations, whether it's printers, web services, whatever the case is, you have that capability. And then network automation and being able to ensure that you're doing provisioning and ensuring network uptime and really optimum performance. And then ultimately you've got change management and reporting. And so mass changes can always be a big challenge. And so Microsoft Management helps to manage that, to audit your policies and to do enforcement and generate reports when the whole thing is done. So those just give you some insights around, some of the use cases that we have as well. And then Bob, let's talk quickly. We're kind of running short on time. We do want to give some of the insights around the user experience. But this is one of the key differentiators for Infoblox is our ecosystem exchange. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Right. This really takes authoritative IPAM to the next level. So if you're seeing so far, what you've seen is pretty interesting because we're pulling it in the central silo. This takes it now. This ecosystem exchange takes it to another level because what this does is allows the master to communicate with platforms that you already have, whether they're a network access control or firewalls or other security tools. We can now share data between our IPAM and their environments. And by doing that, the concept is, different silos. The concept is 1 + 1 now equals 3 because we're more powerful together. We're sharing specific data from our IPAM to their environment that they didn't know about, and then vice versa. What they've discovered is now being shared back into the authoritative IPAM, all using standard pre-built templates that we've integrated with over 80 companies now to make this environment really what we call the ecosystem.
Let's talk for a second now about how this actually works. So it all starts with the IPAM, as we've been talking about, and you've seen the grid now several times. And so Network Insight actually reaches out to our network infrastructure, so our switches and our routers and our firewalls. And so we discover that information. And then all of this is really behind the firewall, right? So we have these external threat feeds that are coming in. Bob just mentioned over 80 different security vendors. And there's really more than 14 billion indices that are coming into the Infoblox Threat Intel Data Exchange, or you'll hear the term TIDE. And that information then is shared out with these various tools. So we have email filters, we have IPS, we have firewall, we have threat intel platforms. And in addition, you might have roaming clients or remote offices, and so that information is shared back through the Infoblox Active Trust Cloud. And so this information, the DNS query and response data, is shared with the cloud. It's also shared with the cloud infrastructure. And then in addition to that, we also share data out to your SIEMs, your vulnerability scanners, your network access control tools, your endpoint security, and your malware detection tools. And so if you look at this, it's really an amazing integration of data to help keep your environment secure. And what we're going to do is just very quickly touch on two in particular, the vulnerability scanner and the network access control solution. And again, we'll just touch on these very quickly, but just know that we have all sorts of integrations across the Infoblox grid and the ecosystem. So Bob, this one is on the end host vulnerability management integration with Rapid7. What are some quick thoughts that you have on this one?
Well, this is an example of how to integrate with any vulnerability scanner, whether it's Rapid7, we also support Qualys and others, but it uses an outbound API. So we set indicators of compromise. You plan them ahead in the Infoblox and say, hey, we see a new IP or a new IP that's infected with malware. Okay, what do we do with it? Well, we can send it now as an indicator out to the Rapid7 or the Qualys, and they can go then say, oh, thank you, and then go remediate that. And then report back that they want to take that, or they've taken that IP off the network or they've blocked it. So this back and forth communication is pre-built with templates that we have with Rapid7 and Qualys for us to communicate very quickly with these indicators of compromise, or IOCs as they're called.
So this slide, and we're just going to touch on this just quickly. So this is a similar example of network access control that we have with Cisco ICE. And so just know that that's available as well. And we probably won't say too much about this, but again, we do have these integrations. I did want to share with you the ecosystem of engaged partners that we have. If you just look at that list, it's pretty impressive just in terms of the number of integrations, and we're adding to these all the time, whether they're strategic alliance partners, whether they're ecosystem partners or system integrators or tech partners. We are one of the unique core network service DDI companies that have actually realized a bigger picture that includes security. The more people that are looking at this data, the more that we're sharing threat data, the more prepared your environment will be. So I want to just touch quickly on reporting and analytics, and just with a couple of moments left, we're going to try and walk you through some of the user experience. So the reporting and analytics really gives you plug and play search dashboards. We have 100 plus pre-built dashboards and customizable reports. We do have a tech demo series that we do specifically on reporting that will go into a deeper dive on that. But again, you can do forensic security investigations, you can do compliance and audits. Bob mentioned that you can go back 2 years. We get access to all of these pre-built reports, and those are available to you. And so really what this means is availability of information right at your fingertips, and really that's what the key is. Bob, I'm just going to move ahead to a couple of slides here. This one just gives you an idea. We have over 100 pre-built reports. There's 45 of these that are specifically designated for IP address management. You can see kind of the list there. We do have a sample report guide that goes into more detail about all of these. This slide actually covers some of the usage statistics that we have that enables an admin to proactively identify what networks are getting to full utilization. So again, we have these reports are available, and they're Splunk based as well, so that if you have Splunk programming capability, you can actually program and build your own reports. So that's a key advantage. We have a promotion going on right now around our reporting free tier, so you can actually get up to 500 megabytes of indexing per day, and try it out. And simply go to the infoblox.com a website and look up reporting and analytics, and you can get all of that information. I'm actually going to skip the polling question. Bob, we just have a couple of moments left here. Can you just walk us through some of the user experience here that we have?
Right. Certainly, we can do you contact the account team and they can give you a deep dive. But this just shows you the look and feel of the Infoblox. Across the top, there's a ribbon there that calls dashboards, data management, smart folders, reporting grid, administration. And then drilling down here, we're looking at the data management. This is your company data under the IPAM tab where everything feeds into. And it's showing here a connect discovery data pulled in from Cisco ACI via the network insight and populates associated to the IP. Again, that information is useful because now we're pulling everything that we know about that object and with additional data. This looks at a view of the individual host data and how it can be broken down into even smaller information that we've discovered about it too. This gives you a hybrid view of DNS and DHCP data, showing you that not only this IP address is used for DNS, but it's also used for DHCP. And with the yellow bar there shows, hey, we discovered something that's that you didn't know was on your network. You can click on it and just see the discovered information about it, and then you can convert it to something. Hey, we want to keep that a managed device, or you can send it to the vulnerability scanners, the ecosystem, or you can block it here by sending a message to the port of the switch to put that switch down. And then this is a Microsoft hybrid centralized view of the Microsoft DHCP data that's coming into the IPAM. You see at the subnet there, the 2829, it's color coded. It identifies that it's a Microsoft network and then shows you the synchronized data that's coming in from Microsoft. This is a look at sites and services. This data that's coming into the Infoblox, the authoritative IPAM, can be in a read-only mode, where first of all, we're seeing the domain, the AD domain, and then next, we're seeing the sites that are associated to this domain. And then next, we're seeing the breakdown of the subnet replication for those sites. And then populating the user data. So this works in a read-only mode, but it can also work in a read-write mode where you can actually make the changes here and then get pushed back to Microsoft. So you have two choices with the Microsoft. You can still log into the MMC on the Microsoft console and make your changes and synchronize up into the IPAM, authoritative IPAM, or you can have new people who are familiar with Microsoft come in here and make the change if they're allowed, and then those updates can be pushed back to the domain controller.
All right, and then this last multi-tenant view that you can share.
And this is then the cloud view of synchronized into a multi-tenant cloud. And you see here that there's the management platforms of Amazon and OpenStack, and then all the VMs and the associated discovered data that we're pulling in from the cloud. The port, the VPC, the domain name, the VM ID, and all this data is being discovered, pulled in, and then also provisioned through orchestrators, and then looking to Infoblox for the next available IP that they can use inside the cloud.
So we're out of time here, but we wanted to just kind of wrap up. So what is the QuickStart and why is it important to you? Well, it gives you authoritative IPAM, as we've shared. You get accuracy and visibility. You get the discovery with network insight, the security and the automation. You do the same in the cloud. And then, of course, we have Microsoft Management, which is your overlay that allows you to keep all your protocols in play. And then, of course, the ecosystem that shares that integrated threat intelligence as well as reporting and analytics to really see the full visibility of everything that's on your network. So again, we appreciate your time today. There are a couple of open questions here, and we'll try and address those when we send out the information. We are out of time, but we do want to just touch on next steps. Bob, there is a DNS health check that they can request. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a number of, certainly testing your public-facing DNS. Cricket Liu, our VP of Architecture, had written a DNS health check that's available from our website. and you can actually just put in your domain name and your name and contact, and it'll actually go probe your DNS environment externally and give you a report of any open ports or issues that it finds.
And there are a lot of resources that are available. We'll be sending you some of these, but these are available on the Infoblox site. If you have any questions, I know we covered the last portion of this fairly quickly. Your account team will be glad to walk you through in about a few minutes, 30 minutes or so. If you have specific use cases that you want to see, the number and the email is listed there. And so we've addressed a number of the questions. We still have a couple of open ones, but we are out of time, and so we do appreciate your participation today. Thank you so much. We will be reaching back, so watch your email. We'll be sending you a recorded version of this presentation today, and then we'll also be sending you some additional free resources that you'll be able to look at. So again, Bob, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And to our audience, thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today. Have a great holiday. We hope to see you again soon.